Hello and welcome back to We Had Movies. This is Mo and your host,
Eric,
Eric. We have Mo and
welcome.
Eric. Yes. And today, what we're going to be doing is we got to come up with a better way to introduce ourselves, to be honest. But yeah, that's the show. So today, we're going to be talking about is the movie Friday. It's a movie that left a little bit of a memory in the back of my head. There's a lot of fun little tidbits from this movie that I'm sure people would recognize in pop culture nowadays, and we'll bring that up as well. And other fun things that we're going to be talking about today is, of course, again, what you eaten. Um, talk about we're going to have Eric start this time with the introduction of the film and just do the quick summary, and then I'll have my turn at it as well. And then yeah, so I hope you're excited for this one, Eric. I don't know, what do you think?
It's been a while since I've seen Friday. I haven't seen it too many times
Okay.
over my life, but I have seen it at different periods in my life. So this one's an interesting one to watch. It definitely all of the cultural references, especially now. Um, I'm looking forward to getting to that part.
Okay, so let's get it started then. So first thing we want to talk about is, of course, what's a good thing to eat while you're watching this film? What kind of snacks could you have? Well, I think this film, like the last film we talked about, it made us think of burgers. Of course, Ninja Turtles made us think of pizza. But this one, I mean, you could go a lot of different directions. But I think I like the idea of going with breakfast foods because there's a really big scene that has a lot of food in it, and it has to do with what they're having
Mm.
for breakfast. And I think if you really wanted to get in the swing of this film, like cult classic style, if you have some Captain Crunch and some green grapes.
I was thinking some waffles and syrup myself, but yeah, some cereal sounds good too.
Excuse me. Yeah. And you could also have some green grapes and some syrup and some waffles and some. You could also probably have the full breakfast that the mom was making. I think she was making eggs with sausage, and I'm not sure what else there was going on there, but I think there was bacon involved. I'm sure there was ham,
Mhm.
something like that. Yeah, so she just had like a full breakfast just made right there for herself, and while her son is watching, and I love how he's cheering her on, like, "Yeah, mom, good for you making breakfast," but then he realizes that she's only making breakfast for herself.
Breakfast for one, exactly.
Yeah, so that was a really good scene, and the other fun scene was the Captain Crunch scene where he's gonna go. And I'm sure you've been told this by your parents before, but like, don't waste your food. And yeah, and so he's going to throw out his Captain Crunch because there's no milk in the fridge to eat the Captain Crunch, and he already spilled some milk on it, and just not enough for it to be good.
And the
So,
dad chides him for it. Yeah.
and the dad chimes him for it, and his dad tells him that, when I grew up, we didn't have food in the fridge. We didn't have all these things. So it's very classic conversation with a Gen Z, or maybe even older now. I guess, sorry, Gen X. What are the generations? Gen X, and then
An ex-millennial.
millennial, but before, I guess, the boomers, right? We just talk about boomers,
Before
but we don't say anything about people in between that. Like, what are our parents?
they would be boomers.
Boomers? Yeah, I guess they would be. Those boomers. Anyway, so yeah, so it was really fun. Fun movie. I guess I say that a lot, but to be honest, what's going on with this film, I like where we explore it. I like where it goes. I like the idea of showing like just like everyday life in somebody's neighborhood. It's kind of indie in that way. And yeah, so and just again, just referring back to the food, like Captain Crunch, is something like comes right from like the memories of the 90s too. Like I don't think you even I don't think I see Captain Crunch anymore in the store. I'm not sure.
Well, there's so many cereals out there, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell now. But yeah. Anyway, so let's move on to the next part, which is the summary of the film, or also what
Okay.
we like to call the book report. So there you go. All
So
right,
I'm gonna
so
keep it brief just because I can be I'm going I could be very long-winded, but I'll keep it brief.
okay,
Um because I mean we want to spend a little bit more time discussing the film.
okay, I'll time you.
So just to generally summarize, the movie is about two guys, Craig and Smokey, played by Ice Cube and what's his name? Chris Tucker. And it's basically a day in their life. You know, Craig got fired from his job, and Smokey decides to hang out with him on a Friday, and it's just them
Shenanigans
hanging out
ensue.
throughout the day. And it's basically a day in the life of two guys living in South Central Los Angeles on a Friday, and literally anything and everything that can happen in that kind of neighborhood. Um, and yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, you know, just because it's really um just so we can get to the meat of the movie.
Sure,
Uh
that's very
a
short
lot
and
of
sweet. Yeah. I mean, what I would add on to that is that, a part of Craig's journey is that he has a friend, Smokey, who's smoking a lot of weed, and that seems to be a problem for him in his life. And you have other friends that you meet along the way from the neighborhood. There's a lot of
yep,
community. The movie starts with shoes hanging off of the electric wires. That's
classic.
funny. Classic, yeah, look. And why do they do that, by the way? Why do they throw shoes up there? Is that just
I'm
like,
not actually sure.
is that just like a way of like just bullying somebody? You just take their shoes and then just throw them up? No,
It
no
might be.
reason.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
yeah, I don't know. And then there's the everyday shenanigans, like you said, and then of course it ends with a big conclusion of Craig having to confront his bully, the local bully, and in front of everybody, and takes care of business and the way a man should. And of course,
I
that
mean,
gives
and
you a happy
you
ending.
bring up a good point. It's a part of it is shenanigans that you encounter, but some of it is, you know, some pretty serious stuff that they deal with
Mm-hmm.
also in, you know, in day-to-day life. And while the I feel like the movie frames itself as a comedy film, it definitely has those serious elements to it that give you pause and that make you think a little bit.
Absolutely. I think Ice Cube knew what he was doing when he wrote that. And I think he had a really good idea of sense anyway of what was going on in his
For sure.
life and where he thought he was going when he imagined that storyline as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, getting into that, let's go ahead and get into the next segment, which is of course, um, uh, sorry, what's the next segment, Derek?
That would be upon further reflection.
Upon further reflection, thank you. At least you get to know what's going on today. So, so anyway, yeah. Upon further reflection, there's a couple other things then leading from the beginning of the story, from the hanging shoes to the city, the streets, and I think they actually filmed the movie in South Central, which is kind of interesting. So they actually took a lot of those shots are from real neighborhoods, so that's really fun.
It it definitely looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, and he takes us through like a journey of, I guess it's young adulthood because it's not
Yep.
really a teenager anymore. He's in his 20s probably, but still
Yeah,
living with his
exactly.
parents.
It's his younger sister who's in high school, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Played by Regina King, I might add.
Oh, that's right. That's the actress. Yeah, Regina King. There's a lot of good actors and actresses in this film too. So
There
you
are.
already you
That's
already
something I
mentioned.
definitely noticed this. Yeah, definitely something I noticed this time around when I watched it is, oh, look at that person. Oh, all of these familiar faces, right?
Yeah, so familiar faces but younger faces, right? Yeah,
Definitely.
but yeah, it's actually fun to see Chris Tucker again, being Chris Tucker, and he had a really good role in the movie. And who was the guy playing Smokey? Not Smokey. Sorry, Big Perm or Big Worm? Was it Big Worm? It's Big Worm.
This big worm, yeah.
So who was that? I forget the name of that actor, but also I've seen him in a lot of things. Well, on top of that, you also had Bernie Mac shows up at one point in the movie,
Yep.
as the Reverend who cheats with the neighbor's wife. Yeah, there's a couple of good funny scenes too with all of these actors. Hmm. So I like the idea of the concept of the film starting off the day. And I think this was more of a reflection of how I felt when I was my younger self. And I think even though this movie came out in 1995, I didn't really enjoy this film until I was in my younger 20s as well. And I had to rewatch it. And when I rewatched it in my 20s, I really, really thought it was I don't know, just like the opening scene with Chris Tucker starts the day with a joint, and it kind of
The wake and
ends
bake.
yeah, it kind of ends the movie also smoking a joint. Like he's like, I'm gonna quit. Like, nah, So yeah, just that whole thing was really attractive to me in my 20s for sure. How did you feel about Chris Tucker's character in general
I
of
felt well.
Smokey?
I think looking back on when I first watched this movie, I thought his character was hilarious. He was just like that over the top guy that we all knew growing up. You know, the guy that was never afraid to like go there or do something that was totally ridiculous. Everybody knows a guy like that. Especially coming from high school, everybody's a friend has a friend like that. Um, so I definitely liked him as a remember liking him a lot, playing that role. Um, Looking back on it now, just the second watch, if if I don't know if again it's just you maybe I'm just getting a little bit too old, but I thought he was a little bit exaggerated in the role, and that could be very well the point, his intent. He may have intended to play it like that, right?
Right.
Um, but I felt like he did play up a little bit, um, especially in the way he spoke. He did put a lot of emphasis on certain words in a kind of comedic way, which now I think I found a little bit more annoying as the movie went on versus, you know, when I was younger, where I might have found that a little bit more, novel. But definitely still the same memorable character that I knocked out. That look, I'm already saying his line. Definitely the same memorable character. With his classic line, "You got knocked the fuck out," right? I
Yeah,
mean,
you got knocked the
I
fuck
mean,
out. Yeah, exactly.
like that's a classic line, and I mean,
I mean,
that's not
he's
even
had
the
a
most classic
few.
line from the movie, right?
No, he's got some good ones
But
in this movie for sure.
he does, and that's why I mean, like I said, there are a few parts of his character that may have annoyed me a little bit now that I'm a little bit older. But like I said, the same likable
Yeah,
Smokey
I
from
mean, you got to keep in mind
when I
that
was young.
they're making him out to be just a stoner, but they do kind of give you that background that he did smoke PCP, so that's why he's a little bit odd. So if you Yeah, so it's not just the fact that it's because he smoked angel dust, right? Remember that scene with the in the car
Oh,
with the black and white
with the Mexicans,
with the Mexicans. Yeah, they gave him
yeah, the
angel
lowrider.
dust.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right,
so
right.
so that's why he's a little bit weird and a little bit over the top, I think, because they're trying to show like his personality is he's just very loud and he's
Changed
just
them.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But
Exactly. He definitely and that's another thing though. The Chris Tucker, he really played those loud characters really well back then when he was younger. You know, if you look
mhm.
at some of his other roles in that time period when we were first started seeing him in movies. um, yeah, he definitely played that loud,
Yeah, and
bombastic character.
I guess you could say that in this movie, he kind of played the role of like the fool, right? Like he was like, if you were
Definitely.
like think of like a Shakespearean play, he's definitely the fool character, and he's like the one. I mean, he's not necessarily giving good or bad advice. He's just giving advice to his friend,
He's
and his
just
friend
that guy that's there.
there,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then his
It's
friend is
it's
just
one of
kind of
those like
like,
take it as you will kind of things, right?
okay, I could either behave like you or not behave like, and there's a little bit of the peer pressure thing going on there too, where he
Yeah, but at the end
basically
of the day,
convinces,
Smokey still gives him that choice, right? He's like,
yeah, he gives him the choice,
right?
yeah, yeah, he does ask him if he's really wanting to do it, but I mean, there is a part of it where there is that peer pressure as well. It's like, oh, yeah, I know you don't smoke, but it's Friday, you ain't got shit to
It's
do.
Friday. You got fired. What do you care,
Yeah,
right? And that
exactly.
and that's a whole point of
How are you
contention,
gonna get fired
like
on your
in
day off? Is what they kept saying too.
yeah, every single person tells him that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that's another thing too, right? Like about the movie, how like that it's the his Craig's firing
yeah.
from the outset of the movie is just kind of like in the backdrop of the entire movie, where apparently there's this video evidence that supports the his contention that he didn't actually do anything and shouldn't have been fired, right? Um, and that it kind of brings up the issue of unemployment, especially in uh, areas like South Central Los Angeles, where where people need those jobs, whatever jobs they can get. So
Yep.
losing a job, even as one as menial as the one that Craig has, is important, right?
Mhm.
But kind of like how his dad pointed out at the beginning of the movie, you're either in school or you're working, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that
And
and
so,
that isn't even just a like a you know maybe a house rule or anything like that. That's a matter of survival, right? Especially being in South Central Los Angeles in the early '90s, right?
yeah, absolutely.
They
But
hell even now,
I
right?
think a part of this film though does have a little bit of that. Uh, because again, it's coming from the eyes of a younger 20-year-old living in South Central, so it has a little bit of that peer pressure storyline in it, and the idea of like how people end up in the situations they do with their friends, and it's not always like
For
on
sure.
purpose, right? Like it's like it could just be like a simple thing, but for one person it's simple and the other person it's very complicated, and then so like what I'm getting at is like Smokey gets him into situations where a normal person maybe wouldn't get you into, because he's like trying to sell weed for a bigger drug dealer, and he's supposed to be selling weed, but he's actually
He's supposed
smoking
to be selling it, but he's actually just smoking it all day,
smoking it
right?
all, which is like again why Ice Cube asks him, how you gonna sell weed when you're smoking it, it's like
Exactly.
so it's true,
Oh, I
and then even
remembered the
when he
name
gets
of the I remembered the name of the dealer, Big Worm, by the way. That's
yeah,
Faison Love.
phase on love, okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. So other characters that show up as well that are really like, I guess would be like the exaggerated character would be like Debo, who's the bully, right? Debo,
Debo, your classic like neighborhood bully, right? Like
neighborhood bully,
the
big guy.
oversized meathead type, right?
Yeah, nobody messes
Not
with
not
Debo.
particularly. not particularly intelligent, but lots of brute force there. Handles all his business with his fists.
Yep.
Um, not afraid of anybody,
I
not
mean,
afraid to do anything.
he crosses the line when he becomes abusive to, well, anybody really. That they start off by showing you the abuse that he has towards his people that he you would consider like his group, like his friends.
His
Um,
neighborhood, right?
yeah, the people from his neighborhood, right? So even how he treats his own neighbors, he's already a danger to the neighborhood. And then on top of that, in the end, he beats up his own girlfriend, which is where things get really, really amped up, and that's where Ice Cube has to step in and box him out. Which we'll talk about the
Exactly.
fight, but yeah, I mean, Debo was a big character. He was very exaggerated in the sense of being like the big meathead bully. Again, a lot of these characters were very like very iconic characters, just like stood out
Hmm.
as separate characters and will be remembered always. Even the character Felicia, which is hilarious because that's where the line "Bye Felicia" comes from. Which people, I hope, if you're
Exactly.
listening, that's where that it comes from. Friday. It's where Ice Cube is like,
Exactly.
"Okay, bye Felicia," and then there and
Everybody
Felicia.
using that. Everybody using that GIF of Ice Cube saying "Bye, Felicia."
Yeah,
That's where that comes from.
that's where that
It's
comes
funny.
from.
I watched that movie with my partner Katrina, and that was the scene. And she's like, "That was it. That was it." And I'm like, "Yup, that's what it was. That was it. It kind of came and went. It's almost like the cultural significance of that scene has kind of overshadowed the actual scene itself,
Yeah,
because it's really it's so dismissive of the actual character Felicia, and but it's because she's such an annoyance, right? And that's how using it now in modern day usage. It's kind of said to dismiss someone who's being annoying, who's being a pest, right?
yeah. So bye Felicia.
Yeah. So yeah, I
she's
mean
just
that
the
was it
she's
was
just an everyday person who wants stuff but doesn't want to have to work for it. And that's not necessarily saying there's anything wrong with that person. There's just it just happens to be the character of Felicia, right? And so that's why it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, Felicia, I guess I get what you want, but bye
I
Felicia.
mean, even her own family can't stand her, right? What's her name?
Yeah.
Her sister, played by Nia Long.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, even she can't stand her, right? So I mean, it definitely speaks to, when you're saying bye Felicia to someone, it's you know really dismissive of that person.
Yep. Other funny lines that stick out really, really, really well. When well, I forget his name, but the character that's kind of like the neighborhood drunk, and he just like comes up to Smokey and follows him into the mini mart, and then slips on his back, and then he injures himself, and he goes, "Ah, my neck, my back, my neck, and my back." And that's like, I've heard
Yeah.
that in a couple of different hip hop verses or something like that. So yeah, that was a classic one. He hurts his back, and and then he tries to sue. Well, basically he's saying that he wants to sue them for injuring himself, and the guy's like, that floor isn't even wet, get up. So yeah, that was pretty funny. And then finally, another line that I remember really, really well from is Bernie Mac when he's like talking to Smokey, and he's like, "Hey, where we come from, I call that a sinny sin sin." And then he responds to him, we call it the 20 twin twin. So yeah, it was pretty funny. Yeah, just a couple of iconic lines. But yeah, this in movie in general has a lot of like iconic stuff and stuff that sticks out and probably will be remembered for always. Um, I like the beginning opening scene of the film, having the dad snoring with the dreaming of food, right? He's talking about like what kind of hot sauce. Yeah, put a little more hot sauce on it while he's sleeping. Sister's sleeping with her head held up, right? Because she doesn't want to get her hair messed up, so she has to hold her head up while she's sleeping. Every time she falls, she
Right.
like adjusts herself, right? And of course, you start the day with Jehovah's Witness knocking on the door. Wouldn't it be another day starting in South Central without Jehovah's Witness knocking on your door early in the morning?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, great opening. I really love that. And then, of course, you get into the breakfast scene, the Captain Crunch, and all that fun stuff. So, yeah,
Just have a couple of trivia points I wanted to bring up.
sure.
Let me see here. Oh yeah, one thing I did find out about this one is that apparently, I know this actually it kind of tracks when you think about it, but Chris Tucker apparently made up most of his lines. Most he improvised most of his lines on this in this movie, which
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
for a character such as Smokey, I think ad-libbing his lines was probably the smarter way to go. To be perfectly honest with you, it feels a little bit more authentic, actually.
Yeah, like oh man, he has so many good ones too. If you're thinking about like lines that he did, so like remember it, write it down, take a picture. I don't fucking care. Oh man, yeah, he was probably one of the best things that happened in that film for sure. And it was kind of interesting when the sequel came out. They didn't really tell us much about where that they didn't really tell us much about what happened to Smokey, other than I think he went back, I went to rehab in the end, or he ended up going to rehab, even though at the end of the
I
movie
believe
he
so.
said he
Yeah.
wasn't going to go to rehab. But I mean, somebody going to rehab for marijuana is also kind of weird. But
I
yeah,
think that's where the joke is, where nobody would actually go to rehab for that.
yeah. So that was really interesting. But yeah, other. I mean, there's some funny scenes, and one fun scene that stuck out in my head. It was the scene where the dad, he's like going to the washroom and tells his son to come talk to him.
Come into the bathroom.
Yeah, come into the bathroom real quick. I'm going to tell you something. And he's taking a shit. He's taking a shit while he's talking to his son, and he's giving him advice, telling him he should get a job. He's got to find his way, how to be
While
a
he's
man
taking his shit.
while he's taking a shit. And the funny thing about that story is that reminds me of myself growing up. And we also had very little boundaries with our dad. And I remember as a kid, my dad, and I having a conversation while he's taking a shit. So it's not a far off thing to happen. So yeah, shit conversations. I mean, I feel like all dads have ever confronted this. I feel like this is a thing, and I think Ice Cube touched on something that nobody else ever showed again. It's such a odd scene, right? Because like nobody would think to have a conversation in a bathroom while somebody's going to the bathroom. Like it's just not, even if it did happen to you, like it did to me, I would never have thought to share that with anybody until now. So yeah, very odd, very odd. Another odd scene was the way they kind of portrayed marijuana again is like they did that a lot in the 90s movies is like
That's a
they did this.
psychedelic.
Yeah, it's almost like too much of a psychedelic. It's like what weed are they smoking? Because like
Yeah,
that's more like doing mushrooms or something like that, where like he opens up the cupboard and then he
exactly.
sees the head of Big
It,
Worm. Yeah, that was a really
exactly.
weird scene. Yeah, there was like a moment where they even had Ice Cube. I don't know if it was a voiceover, but you could hear Ice Cube talking in his head while
I think
Smokey went inside
yeah,
for a second, and it was just like an odd. cut of a scene where it just had nothing to do with anything else. It's just Ice Cube talking in his head. I thought that was more
I mean,
what
they could have
marijuana
just been caught. Well, I mean, if you're going to say that what marijuana is like for somebody who doesn't do it, who doesn't smoke it, I mean, it could kind of have that, real mind altering effect.
could it?
But
Okay.
but I mean, you're not wrong. There were certain aspects of it. I mean, I wouldn't hallucinate someone's head in a cupboard.
No, that's what
I
I
think
mean.
that
Like,
might have been a bit much.
but I think the
Um,
scene with the where he was talking in his head, I think that was very true to him, yeah, having a moment, and then the moment had to do with marijuana. So I think they did that pretty true to to what it was, and at least how it vibes. But there was some things, there was just some, there's always something they need to add in movies to make it more spectacular. And I think that the one thing I thought was the opening the cupboard and then Big Worm's head was there. And it could just be like
mhm.
his, they're trying to show like his paranoia has increased, like he has more anxiety or something because of it. And that's what's triggering that sort of imagery. But I guess they only could show it in a way that, like, again, in a movie, you can't really show how people feel when they're high, right? So, I mean, you can,
Exactly.
but it's not always as interesting as a visual, like somebody's head
And
in
I
a
feel like it's
cupboard.
always going to be different, right? Because it's something that's up to interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it is a really personal journey too, right? So doing drugs, you could end up having uh, a journey that actually makes sense to you and it takes you in a right direction, and then in other ways it can be very very harmful to you. Again, I would never say do drugs at a younger age. That's not really my uh, I'm not going to tell younger kids to do drugs or anything like that. But if you're an adult and you're able to consent for yourself and you've tried it and you think that it's what works for you, then good for you, right? Like, I mean, what can you say to people?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that's a big thing, right? When you can consent for yourself.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I mean, this movie is very opposite of what we had last time, where we were talking about like the 1992 class act, where they were strictly about hip hop scene and being anti-drug and the anti-drug rally. Where in this movie, they weren't necessarily glorifying drugs because they were showing you that you could still get in a lot of trouble dealing with drug dealers, and guns get involved and things can go wrong. So um,
I think what they did do though is they may have normalized the way that how pervasive drugs are in, you know, urban areas, right? And how
mhm.
um it's one of those factors that again, it's a means of survival for a lot of people, especially in communities that deal with high unemployment and high crime, right? It just seems to naturally be a part of that particular environment.
Yeah, and I think that's a part of it too. I mean, even though it's supposed to be an everyday in the neighborhood sort of story, it's still trying to be true to the neighborhood that he's from. And in that neighborhood, you would have things like gang violence, gun violence,
Well,
that
I
sort
mean,
of thing.
if even if you didn't want to use the smoking weed comparison, you could just as easily replace that with like uh a 40 ounce of malt liquor in a paper bag, and that was just as common back then as someone smoking a joint, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I mean, they did show it with the one character, like I was saying,
yeah,
the side
exactly.
character. Yeah, the one that points out that Smokey's taking a shit on the side of his house. Remember that? That was a good scene. Hey, everybody!
When
Smokey's taking a shit.
I mean, one of the really memorable scenes for me was, and I mean, memorable and a little bit cringeworthy, I would say, was the neighbor that lives in front, the very attractive woman that clearly has uh, a pattern of sleeping with other men in the neighborhood. But when her husband gets home and he happens to be a little person,
Yeah, that was funny.
and you see this
And
little person chasing this guy around
yeah,
on the front lawn, and then you see him throwing all of her shit out because I guess he kicked her out of the house.
yep, he caught her sleeping around. And they did a really good job with that scene too. And I think I like that they picked that character. I don't know. I mean, obviously they did it. They picked specifically that actor. Probably they casted him for comedic purposes, like just like
Yeah,
a smaller man with like the hot neighborhood. I guess MILF is kind of she's kind of a MILF. I don't know what she's supposed to be. Yeah, but they're yeah, there's the whole thing where they're all staring at her and they're like, "When you gonna let me?" Yeah, and then so they're definitely all like
what's she
into
doing?
her.
She's gardening or something like that, and
Hmm.
the,
And
the
I think that
skimpiest
that
outfit.
yeah, I think that woman actually is like was like a model at the time that they picked to do the role. So either a model or she was in some sort of bathing suit or competition or something like that. Who knows? But yeah, so I think they did this juxtaposition on purpose, but I think the whole point wasn't to make fun of little people, it was maybe more to show you that
No,
it
no, no.
didn't yeah, it was almost like empowering in a sense. It was just like giving him the upper hand as the man of the house, and rightfully so should get upset that she's just
Well, and I mean,
playing.
he did kick her out, right? As opposed
Yeah.
to her walking all over him.
Yep. Yep. So all right, so let's go on to the next part, which is it talking to me? Is the movie telling me what I need to feel when I need to feel? No, is it giving me a journey? Is it giving me a journey? Is it letting me understand life in a little bit of a way? And I think it does. I think there's a part of this movie that's very calming and almost a meditation. And I think the part of it that to me that I enjoy is just the fact that you have this neighborhood that everybody in the neighborhood's familiar with each other. I think there's something about community that's something to be said about the South Central area. And maybe there is a lot of gang violence, maybe now different. I'm not sure. You could always let me know if you ever reach out. But what I am curious more about is just the fact that it it shows like this experience, this journey between friends that, but not just friends, but like just people in general, how they communicate with each other and how they talk to each other and how they try to stay together in a community. Like even if they didn't really like the neighborhood bully, let's say, they everybody knew who he was. Everybody was familiar with what was
Yeah,
going on with
yeah.
everybody's family. And so there was something about that familiarity that I really found attractive, especially when I was younger. And it's just something I always wished I had. And I think when I was in my 20s, when I was living in like Mississauga, I took it upon myself to try to live my life the best way. That way is like knowing everybody in the neighborhood and chilling
In the
outside
neighborhood, yeah.
on the patio and hanging out with people from all walks of life. And I think that's where I would like to be a lot of the times, is just in that sort of community, sort of with everybody, where I could just like hang out with a buddy anytime, knock on his door and just
Like
go
actually
over.
being in a community, right? Not just
Hmm.
feeling like you're just in someone's way, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How did you feel about that though? Like, did you feel like there was a lot of that community conversation?
Absolutely. I think one of the big things about this movie is like it's really authentic and real portrayal of urban life in a community like that. Um, like you said, everybody knows each other. Everybody kind of knows each other's business, whether it's good or bad. So you've got that neighborhood gossip. But I think also it means that people kind of look out for each other. And you definitely see that in this movie. It's um, up until this, like throughout all the movies that we've seen up until now, one of the big themes has been friendship. And, whether it's between brothers, between unlikely friends, such as in Class Act, or in this case, two friends that, have probably grown up together in the same neighborhood. It's something that you see here is that not only do they look out for each other, but one of the big things is that they stand up for what's right,
Hmm.
whether it's uh Craig getting his job back because, he really didn't uh, do what he was accused of doing, or standing up to the neighborhood bully who, finally crosses the line that the community, I guess, had set. I mean, obviously now we may have different standards on what we think is acceptable from some. I mean, obviously, we honestly now we wouldn't tolerate any kind of bullying from anybody, but I think back then maybe to a certain degree, maybe because of Debo's size or, whatever, there was a certain tolerance for him. They just accepted to live with him. But obviously, there was a line in the sand that was drawn. And when he crossed that line, everybody kind of rallied behind Craig and, stood behind him.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's what you want to see is like more of that community feeling, the feeling that everybody,
And that
yeah,
very much is
everybody was,
I mean, yeah, a guy gets his ass beat, but he kind of deserved it, with all the shit he had pulled with so many people from the very
yeah,
beginning of the movie. He
you
kind of,
mostly felt
by
sorry
the
for the
end,
one
he
guy
kind of
who
deserved
lost.
it.
Yeah, you feel sorry for the one guy who lost like a lot, like his bike. He got his face punched in. He got lost his chain every
He got
time
his
Debo
bike
comes
back.
around. But he
He
gets it
got
all
his bike
back.
back
He
though.
gets it all back. Yeah, he gets it all back after, and he gets to punch him back too, and then takes off excited.
Exactly.
Yeah. And of course, at that point, we'd have to assume that Debo goes to jail, but we don't know that yet. Not in that movie, anyway. Yeah, I mean, other
Yeah,
things that
exactly.
other interesting social facts that show up. I mean, there's the concept of religion and how that plays in the day to day life, and it really doesn't. Not for Craig anyway. But funny how they slam the door on Jehovah's Witnesses' face, and then Jehovah's Witness are like fucking assholes and walk away. But other things are like also making reference to the Reverend, who's not really as um
Christian, as he makes
as
himself out to be.
yeah, exactly. He's not quite that
Well,
much as he wakes
he's the
himself
one
up.
that
Yeah.
he's the one that sleeps with the woman across the street, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of like messaging there about how religious people are just frauds or fakes, or
And
fake or fraudsters or whatever it is.
yeah, and they
Yeah.
do it in a very comedic way. And I think another one of the big things they do is kind of like expectations on that are placed on young black men, Again, going
Hmm.
back to the whole you got to work or you got to be in school thing. I mean, not that those shouldn't be the two options, but I'm just saying like it is a theme that's explored through this movie. You're talking about two young guys who clearly have different goals in life. Smokey has one goal,
Hmm.
whereas Craig, you don't know really where he stands. I mean, you know where he stands on a few things, but he he really hasn't made any decisions on what he wants to do with himself. But I think he wants to do right by himself and his family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's that, and then I mean the anti-religion. It's not really anti-religious, but it's like a theme of just showing you that again day to day people aren't always this like they are not always what they show themselves to be. And I think that was the big idea is like some people are just putting on a face. Even at one point, I think the mom, she waves at the lady across the street, right? And she's acting like she's like, oh yeah, we're friends, but really deep down inside, she's like, oh, I hate that woman.
Well,
Right?
and like, and that's a really good point, and regardless of what we believe, I think we're also just people at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
And
people
I,
people are going to be people, and they're going to be nasty to each other from time to time, or talk behind each other's backs, or gossip about one another. And I think that's just, it's, again, your faith aside, I think that's just a part of human nature, and that's something we'll always do to one degree or
yeah,
another.
and this movie definitely portrays a certain human nature, and I think that's
For
another
sure
big
it does.
that was a big journey for me too when I was watching this film, especially remembering it from when I was younger. um like just the feeling of I don't know, just like the weight of the world being so big, but then like you have your friends, your family, everybody around you, and it's
Mm,
not seen as a negative thing. Like it's just like it's okay that Craig is living with his parents. There's something
yeah.
interesting about that, where it's like, yeah, as long as he's, once he starts working, he can figure it out. But like there's no rush to kick people out of the house, or leave somebody behind, right? The community works kind of together in that way. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for me, something that I lost my train of thought.
You lost your train of thought. That's okay. We'll get back to it. And yeah, I mean, Smokey takes me on a different journey too, where again, it's about this like idea of I have a complicated life, but I'm living it the way I know best. And there's a lot of interesting messaging there too,
You're definitely,
because
yeah, you're definitely on the right track there about Smokey. He's definitely someone that wants to keep his life, complication free as much as possible, right?
yeah, exactly.
He's it's very, he isn't stressed about anything,
Yeah,
right? He
there
just
is a little bit of a like philosophical journey because he's unconfrontational, but in the sense that only when he needs to be he confronts people, but like in a real world he just would rather just sit back and not have to deal with anything. And I think that character philosophically is in a lot of different stories, again going back to referencing the fool from like Shakespearean plays or whatnot, but just the idea of like this character, the side character who just is showing you how there's just all these like ups and downs in life and everything, but you could also just be this thing floating in the middle. You don't have to always,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah, you don't always have to worry about all the ups and the downs and all the things that are going on in the world. You can just sometimes you just need to sit back and take a break and relax with your friend, and just breathe in the air. Well, he's not breathing much air, but you know what I mean.
No, exactly. But and I think that's just it. That that sentiment is really on display when they're just hanging out on the front porch. They've got music going. They're just sitting back on a chair.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's enjoying the day. Just very stress
It's the
free. I mean, obviously,
it's the dream on a
Craig's got
Friday.
his
Yeah,
yeah. Obviously, Craig has things on his mind. He's going through some shit, but I think Smokey is there to just kind of give him a Friday to just let him relax.
yeah,
Try to ground um
Yeah,
Craig a little bit
it's again
because he seems
almost
to be stuck in his
meditational.
head a little
It's
bit.
almost meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you just need to ground yourself. Just take a moment and just experience this, and we'll worry about the other stuff later. Now, he does that a lot to the point where it's bad for him, right? But the idea is that character is still like, he's not without his flaws. It's just that he's the part of the journey, he's the part of the philosophy that's more laid back. And then there's, of course,
Well, and that's just
the
it
other
because
side, the other conscience, which is Craig, and Craig is the one that's like, okay, but we can't just not do anything all the time, right? You got to
well,
sometimes
exactly. He's the angel on the one shoulder, and Smokey's the devil on the
on
other,
the
right?
other. Yeah,
Um,
right. That's a good way of putting it.
Smokey's a bit of a contradiction. He's he's a flake because I mean he can't even sell the weed that he's supposed to sell. He's just smoking it all. But at the same time, as a friend, he's right there for Craig. Um, he kind of supports him the whole movie. So I mean, from that perspective, he's as reliable as it gets, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, other weird things going on here, like in just a geographical way. Again, it's set in the '90s, so you got to think about how there's no cell phones, there's no smartphones. People have to actually go ahead and knock on people's doors to actually see if they're around, or call them on their home phone number.
Well, on
And
the home phone, yeah.
the home phone, and how mom gets annoyed with the girlfriend constantly calling Craig to see what he's up to, if he's been cheating on her and whatnot. um the hoochie mama, hoochie mama. Yeah.
Oh, that
And
song. That song got stuck in my head after I watched this movie.
yes, exactly. Yeah, and then there's that. There's also like the Ford Pinto that Smokey drives. Like, he just happens to drive an old Ford Pinto that's just falling apart, and he has to stop it with one foot. Like, that to me was funny. Like, just there's no brakes on it anymore, like parking brakes. It's just you have to stop it with your foot. Yeah, that was good. And then other things geographically, just the atmosphere again. Like I said, it's just like a walk down the block to go to this person's house. Walk down the block and you know where you're
Yeah,
going. This
exactly.
Yeah, I kind of missed that sort of environment from when I was younger, and I think that there's too much of this, like, now, where people close themselves off into their own homes, and then you're closed off to your social media, you're closed off by um your Netflix, your whatever, right? Like, you just
Mm.
there's no need to go out anymore and reach out to people. Even though I'm saying, watch movies, watch a movie, but watch it with friends, right? Like, get together, have a good time, enjoy the show, have a chat after, definitely
Yeah, exactly.
something about it. The camaraderie is something that I miss. And I think that this movie definitely brings it out a lot. Any other social aspects that you wanted to talk about?
I still haven't gotten my train of thought back. Not that I can think of.
Okay.
What what would we say here to finish this off? Would we recommend this?
I mean,
Technically?
would we recommend this movie? I mean, let's see. I say it's a movie worth rewatching, of course, because it's classic. It's got a cult following already, so I don't really think we have to push it, because I'm sure there's somebody out there who's going to love watching Friday, and just as much as we did when we were younger. Would I say it has the same feeling for me now when I'm reaching my 40s? Not necessarily. But there's still some scenes. There's a lot of good scenes. There's a lot of funny lines that I still enjoy from it. So that
Yep,
it's
definitely.
so maybe I'm rewatching it and there's nostalgia that's making me think it's funny, but I don't know. Like, there's some stuff that still popped up that I just remembered. And again, a lot of it has to do with the physical comedy again, which I didn't really notice as much before, but just noticing things like again, like the way that the dad reacts to things with his face, and the when he's
Hmm.
pooping in the bathroom and he's talking, and Smokey and his like behavior and his moving around, his movement, a lot of that. And that brings you in, that pulls you into the characters as well. So there's a lot of good physical comedy as well. But as far as a whole story, yeah, I mean, I like that it gives you a nice little moral ending, that we don't need to use guns in the neighborhood. We could just, fight it out like real people. I think a part of it also screams this idea of like, hey, you know, let's not let's not say that you're more a wimp because you don't have a gun. That's not the fact. The fact is the person who carries a gun is probably more of a wimp, right? Because that's the person who's scared that he's going to get beat up. Like, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter if you get beat up. You can get up the next day and you can go on with your life. Whereas you shoot somebody, you're never going to see them again. And that's just a wuss's way, a wuss, I should say
Howard's
um
Way.
a cowardly way. Yeah, the cowardly way out. It's a good way of saying it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely think it's worth a watch, even how many years later? Almost 30 years now. Um, it's an interesting view into the life of a couple of guys, or 20 something year old guys in South Central Los Angeles who are just trying to figure things out for themselves. Living in this neighborhood of hilarious and likable characters, memorable characters that I think a lot of us can resonate with, because they may remind us of somebody that we know. Um, I mean, does everything in the movie stand up to the test of time? Not necessarily, but I don't think it has to. I think just enough of it has to, just to kind of maintain some relevance. And again, achieving cult classic status. I mean, it kind of it's a movie for the ages, right? I'm pretty sure it's on a bunch of people's one of the best comedies ever lists. So I mean, not only does it rank up there for a great movie of the '90s, but just overall in terms of comedy movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's up there. I mean, I would still say that, um just to watch Chris Tucker again, that's probably why I would watch this movie. That's probably the thing that would bring me back. Craig's character is interesting, but it's not the person that really takes you by storm.
It's not necessarily memorable,
Yeah.
right? I think Ice Cube has a lot other more memorable roles in movies that he's done since.
Hmm.
Uh, but I even
But
I
I
even heard
I
somebody
would I would
somebody
be
say
interested.
that you should
Sorry, go
watch the
ahead.
movie Anaconda, because Ice Cube's in the movie Anaconda, right? You should
Hmm.
watch the movie Anaconda like he's Craig from Friday, and that's like his next job.
Ah, I will give that a shot. Okay, good way to end that. Yeah, we should watch Anaconda as Craig as getting his new
Craig
job.
from Friday.
That's funny. I mean, I would like to just say, all in all, I would like to see another Friday movie, but maybe like redo Friday, but like again using South Central, maybe in a neighborhood today. Maybe it's not the same
Hey, maybe
awkwardness. Maybe
maybe
it's not
maybe his
as
son can play Craig.
maybe his son can play Craig. I don't know. It'd be worth giving it a watch. I would definitely enjoy that. I mean, they did do a
Yeah.
lot of Friday movies after that one, but they weren't necessarily the same. But I would definitely be interested in seeing somebody try to remaster or remake this movie the way it was back then. Um,
Hmm.
just like with more modern technology, more modern sort of appearance, and a more modern take. But yeah, really enjoyed the film. I hope you guys enjoy it too if you give it a watch again. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
itty bitty, looking pretty chill. Put my shades on, you ain't even seen it yet. Man, I'm so fresh, and you know I'm always spelling chill. Give me what you want, what you got, cause I never get enough. You ask me how I want it, and you say you want a chance on me. Chances are you don't know how to do this shit respectfully. I say it like you're rough, cause I need a man protecting me. I ain't say this shit for later. I said, baby, come and get it. Feels taking over if you let him. I'ma take the paper, I'ma roll it up later. He might do what he wanted, cause I let him. Give me something that I'm never gonna forget. Because baby, I'm the only one you gotta impress. I won't take any more and I won't take any less. I'm the queen in this, you know I got the finesse. Give me that, give me that, give me that. Give me that feeling. Bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. Like when we were young. Like when we were young. Like when we were young.
Bring it back, yeah, just bring it back. Sitting in the back, yeah, I'm rolling up some Trinidad. Feeling like the bestest, always got the best shits. Come around, baby, yeah, you knowin' who the best is. And that's just for the record, so y'all don't get it twisted. I ain't talking cheese, even though I'm buzzing, listen. You don't wanna miss it when you get the feeling. It'll make you feel explicit like a new addiction, baby, it'll take a hold. I know you're feeling cold, cause I've been feeling cool. You give me all these feelings that I used to have in school. These butterflies got me feeling light, like I'm floating through the air, hanging out like a satellite. Yeah, it's really got me feeling right. All around me, yeah, looking like a ceiling light. Hanging out with a hella glow. See me from the center of the earth with no telescope.
Give me that,